Welcome to another episode of Purpose Today with Dr. April Dobson. I'm your host, Dr. April Dobson, and I'm so excited today for our very special episode as we continue part two of Purpose Aligned Career Search. And today we are doing a question and answer session. And I'm going to start out by recapping what we talked about last week. And I'm also going to answer the questions that I didn't have an opportunity to answer in last week's live. And I'm also going to answer any questions that you have today. And I do want you to think about the question that I asked for everyone, the reflection question last week. What is the legacy that you want to leave in your life and career? And if you stay tuned until the end, you'll have an opportunity to ask all the questions that you have, and you can start putting them in the chat. If you were here last week and you thought of a question and you didn't quite have an opportunity to do that on today. But I am going to start with the question that I didn't have an opportunity to answer last week. And I look forward to answering all your questions tonight as we talk about purpose aligned career search part 2, our Q&A. And we will be back after these special sponsorship messages.
Dreaming of writing a book, launching a podcast, or creating a digital course? Ready to finally align your career, creativity, and impact? The Purpose Aligned Life Premium Coaching Cohort is here to help you turn purpose into reality. You'll receive tailored services, a personalized one-on-one assessment, 10 weekly group sessions, and exclusive strategy session, all for your desired transformation.
And if you're interested in registering for the Purpose Aligned Life Premium Group Coaching Program and you desire additional insight on the program and you'd like to have your questions answered, I encourage you to use the link in the chat on the at Dr. April D. Dobson YouTube channel for that link so that you can complete your registration for a session with more information on the next cohort of the Purpose Aligned Life Premium Group Coaching Program. Well, thank you so much for everyone who's tuning in. And I want to thank you all for the excellent questions and your engagement last week. I did not have an opportunity to answer all of the questions live. So I want to make it a point to start with a recap first, just a really quick recap of what we talked about, and start with the questions that I did not have an opportunity to answer during last week's live. So we are continuing with our topic, purpose aligned career search, and we're in part 2, and we're going to cover the question and answer. So if you didn't have an opportunity to put your question in the chat last week, then I encourage you to do that today. And if you asked for questions and you have another question or something that you didn't think of, I do encourage you to put that in the chat. So last week we talked about being able to position yourself for purpose aligned career opportunities and attracting the opportunities that you're desiring to you, and ensuring that you have the ability to do what you love what you do by being in a purpose aligned career. And you're not restricted. You don't have to stay in a career because that's what you've always done. You have the flexibility to pivot when you desire to pivot. And so we talked about the importance of rising to purpose, recognizing that our purpose comes from our Creator. God created us, and so He created us all with a purpose, and then identifying God's purpose specifically for your life. And that's going to come by God revealing that purpose to you, and you want to align with that purpose. And then the S and Rise is submit your plans to God, submit your plans to His will for your life and the purpose that He has for your life. And, I know that we talked a little bit about it last week, but we didn't go too much in depth. But there's this scripture that plans it, but it is the Lord's purpose for him that will stand, be carried out. And that's the amplified of Proverbs 19 and 20. Identified what that purpose is that God has for your life, and that you submit your plans to God's will and purpose for your life. And then the E in rise is to execute desires that God places in our heart. And so I encourage you to not ignore these deep desires that you have, because often it's aligning with the purpose that you were created for. And so Proverbs 3 and 5 through 6 and Psalm 37 and 4 in your spare time if you want to take a look at those. Now, I also talked about when you discover, and thank you so much, Z, for saying hi. When you discover that you are not aligned and you want to pivot, and there's something that you want to do, and that what you want to do is different from what you've done historically, then you want to start by revising your resume, revising your LinkedIn profile, because revising your LinkedIn profile is going to help to attract the right recruiters. It's going to allow the right people to see your profile and be able to clearly distinguish what it is that you're wanting to achieve, what matches your purpose aligned outcomes. And so with the resume, we talked last week about identifying all of the experience, the skills, the education that you have that relates to the direction that you're going in. A lot of people make the mistake of including a lot of information in their experience, their skills, and their education that really doesn't have any relevance to the direction that they're going in, and it keeps them in this cycle, it keeps them in this loop of doing what they really don't desire to continue doing. So you want to start, as we talked about last week, by updating your resume, updating your LinkedIn profile, so that it matches those purpose-aligned outcomes. Now, I'm not going to go over everything that we talked about last week, but I wanted to at least give a baseline in case there are people who are viewing live today who weren't able to tune in on the live last week. So I made some notes of questions that I did not have an opportunity to answer last week, as well as questions that I thought were excellent questions that people asked last week. And I'm watching the chat today, and I'm going to do my best today to answer all of the questions today in the live. And if for whatever reason we don't have an opportunity to answer all of your questions today, then I will be sure to include it in next week's live. So one of the questions that I didn't have an opportunity to answer last week, and I didn't annotate who asked this question, so I do apologize if you asked this question last week. Feel free, if you're watching again, to put in the chat. But the question was, how can we build confidence while pursuing our purpose? And I do appreciate whoever asked that question. I didn't take note of it. But to build confidence while you're pursuing your purpose, there's a few things that you can do to build your confidence. One is by taking action on a desire that you have. When you know that there is something that aligns with your purpose and you have a desire, you have an idea, you have something that you're dreaming about, go ahead and act on it before you talk yourself out of it. And when you take action, when you're thinking about it, it causes you to be more proactive, and it also gives you confidence that when you are dreaming of doing something, when you have a desire and you see the impact on what you've done, it gives you more confidence to continue to do that. The other thing that you want to do is you also want to use positive affirmations that are relevant to the desires that you have, the goals that you have, the dreams that you have. That's going to help to reinforce those actions that you're taking on what you are desiring. I also encourage you to build your confidence. There are, I do believe in reading books that are that are books that will allow you to further develop and strengthen the skills that you have, to strengthen the talents that you have, and that will help to further inspire and empower you to pursue purpose in your life. I also encourage you to consider joining groups on LinkedIn, groups on Facebook that align with the interests that you have, the goals that you have, because that's going to put you in spaces that allow you to connect with like-minded people. I also encourage you to really form community. It's so important to find a community, find like-minded professionals who are going in the same direction. Having coaches, having mentors will also help to build your confidence as well, because coaches and mentors can help to save time, valuable time. They can help you to be very intentional and strategic with your efforts so that what you're doing it's effective and efficient. So that was a great question. Now, please feel free to drop your questions related to purpose-aligned career searches, anything that's relevant to the topic, and I'm happy to answer for you tonight in the live. And thank you so very much, Ali, for that compliment. I appreciate you sharing that this is a great show. So thank you so very much, Miss Ali. I really appreciate that feedback. And I'm happy to answer any additional questions that you all have live. I want to go back to some of the questions that were asked last week, in case there are people who have the same question. And thank you so very much, Ali, for sharing that this is an inspiring topic. And again, we're continuing in the discussion that we started last week, because there were so many questions that you all presented, and I do appreciate your engagement from last week. And because I didn't have an opportunity to get to all the questions, we are continuing our discussion about purpose-aligned career searches, and this is our part 2. We're specifically in a question and answer session on tonight. I've already done a recap, and you want to think about what is the legacy that you want to leave in your life, what is the legacy that you want to leave in your career. So just following the comments on tonight, if there's any questions that you have, feel free to drop those in the chat. Now, going back to some of the questions from last week, and I do thank all of you who are watching on Facebook and on YouTube and LinkedIn. But if you do have questions, I do encourage you to put those in the chat, in the comments on YouTube, on the @Dr. April D. Dobson YouTube page, using that handle. And so going back to the questions that you all had on last week, and I'm certainly accepting additional questions today. So there was a question that Maria asked, and Maria's question last week was, does daily reflection really improve career decisions? And yes, when you reflect daily, it helps to improve your career decisions. It also helps to improve the decisions that you're making in your life and your business if you are an entrepreneur. The reason that daily reflection helps to improve decisions is because you are closing the gap between when a decision is made and when you have an opportunity to assess the positive aspects of that decision, the aspects of the decision that you maybe could have perhaps done differently, so that if you have a similar decision or you're faced with something that is similar in the future or relevant in the future, you can make adjustments. It also gives you an opportunity to assess whether or not you are fully purpose aligned in the decision that you made, and if you need to make any adjustments. It's better to have these reflections early on so that you don't end up off course and off track. So I see a question from Tobias. that says, what if my current job doesn't align with my purpose? Tobias, that is an excellent question. And I know that so many people are in the same situation, that they're in a role that doesn't align with their purpose. And so one of the first things that you can do first when you realize that it doesn't align is to actually sit down and take a full inventory. You want to assess what exactly with your current role is not aligned. You want to specifically indicate the areas that are aligned and the areas that are not aligned. And you want to assess whether or not there are any adjustments that you can make immediately in your current role that will allow you to come into alignment. Now, if you make this assessment and there aren't any areas at all that are aligned, and you are fully out of alignment, and there's not a way that you can bring yourself into alignment by making adjustments, then you want to start seeking other opportunities. You can assess whether or not there are other opportunities within your organization. Maybe there's an opportunity for a developmental assignment, or there's an opportunity for a rotation. Maybe there's an opportunity within your organization for professionals to be reassigned to opposite roles. So you want to do an assessment, but you want to first sit down and clearly identify what is aligned and what is not, right? And so if you can bring yourself into alignment by having adjustments, then do that. If it's not possible, then you want to seek other opportunities. The other thing that you can do is you can sit down with a coach or a mentor and express where you are, what you've determined, and ask if they can give you advice on how you might be able to shift into what you're desiring to shift into, or pivot into what you're desiring to pivot into, and they may be able to help you to do that in a more efficient manner. Now, I see there's a question, can purpose change throughout life? So there can be, your purpose can expand, it can grow, it can evolve. Typically, a person's purpose at the core is about the same. It doesn't mean that things can't evolve and they can't change over time. Sometimes we have even more clarity regarding our purpose and there's a shift. So the way that we pursue purpose and we align with purpose can change throughout our lifetime, but typically purpose at its core is typically about the same. Not to say that it's impossible, because it's not, but excellent question. Oftentimes, purpose will expand, purpose will cause you to make a greater level of impact, and it can be executed and fulfilled in different ways. So thank you for that excellent question. I see another question that says, how do I know I'm on the right career path? So that is an excellent question, Ryan. So oftentimes when you are on the right career path, alignment typically has a sense of peace that you have with what you're doing. You typically have a zeal and a passion and a love. There's a sense of fulfillment with what you're doing. And so those are ways that you can determine if you're on the right career path. But I always encourage people to pray and, seek guidance from God. He created us. He knows what our purpose is. He knows what His will is for our lives. I talked a little bit earlier, for those of you who were on, about Proverbs 19:21 that says many plans are in a man's mind, but it's the Lord's purpose for him that will stand, that will be carried out. There's one translation that says that will prevail. So that's an excellent question. So you definitely want to ensure that you are prayerful, but you also want to sit down and reflect. That daily reflection is important. Times of prayer and meditation are very important, but you also want to assess, do you have fulfillment in what you're doing? Are you making an impact in what you're doing? Does what you do bring you joy? And so those are some things that some questions that you can ask yourself and some steps that you can take to assess whether or not you are on the right career path. Jim asked a question, what's the biggest mistake people make in career searches? One of the biggest mistakes that people make is searching for opportunities just because they've done something similar. They search for roles that are similar to roles that they've been in, solely based on what they've done, instead of searching based on purpose alignment. That's one of the biggest mistakes people make. And they also make the mistake of thinking that because that they've done something for an extended period of time, they've been in the same career for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, whatever the timeline is, they have the misconception that they have to stay in that career. And that is so far from what is actually true. It's important that you are purpose aligned and that you are seeking out opportunities that align with your purpose. And when you have a desire, something that you're dreaming about, often those deep desires are indicators of purpose. So excellent question. Thank you so much for asking that. Tobias, thank you for that compliment. Tobias says this is such an encouraging discussion. So you're very welcome, Tobias. I really appreciate you sharing your feedback and for watching today. I'm glad that this is helping you and helping others to think deeply about purpose and career. So thank you so much for that. Thank you, Allie, for sharing that you appreciate how practical the advice is, and this is inspiring to hear faith and career connected clearly. So thank you so very much. I am glad that this is inspiring. And Joey has asked, what advice do you have for young professionals? Joey, thank you for asking that great question. For young professionals, it's never too soon to align with and pursue purpose. I encourage young professionals to pursue your purpose from the very beginning. Pursue aligning with your purpose from the very beginning. And I encourage you to be committed to doing what you love, to doing what you dream about. And I also encourage young professionals to not use the wrong factors to decide which career path you should take. A lot of people make the mistake of saying, well, I'm going to choose this career because it makes a lot of money, or I'm going to choose this career because there are a myriad of opportunities where I live. I'm going to choose this career path because my parents had this career, or because my parents are suggesting this career, or I'm going to choose this career path because this is what my counselor said would probably be a good idea and a career that's always needed. You want to first choose the career that aligns with your purpose, and you want to ensure that you're doing what you've been placed on this earth to do. So that's the advice that I would have for young professionals. Thank you so very much for viewing and for asking that phenomenal question. So I have a question from Jennifer that says, how do I recognize purpose-aligned opportunities? So that's a wonderful question, Jennifer. So first, you sit down and you ensure that you have what your purpose is, at least on paper. Either you write it down, or you use your iPad, you use your computer, your laptop, to actually put your purpose on paper. When you have an opportunity that's presented, then you look at what is the opportunity, and you ask yourself the question, how does this opportunity align with my purpose? And you ask yourself, does this opportunity allow me to make an impact in the ways that I desire to make an impact? Does this opportunity allow me to solve the types of problems that I desire to solve? Does this opportunity allow me to, do what I'm passionate about doing and fulfill purpose? If you ask yourself these questions, right? How is it purpose aligned? How does it allow me to make an impact? How does it allow me to solve problems that I desire to solve? Then that will help you to recognize purpose-aligned opportunities. Excellent question, Jennifer. Thank you so much for viewing and for engaging and asking that excellent question. And I just want to thank everyone for watching today. Thank you so much, Curleen. I appreciate you watching, and I'm so glad that this is very helpful and that it's timely for you. Thank you so very much. I appreciate you viewing and engaging today. Jason said, I love how this session encourages us to focus on purpose instead of just chasing a paycheck. Thank you so very much, Jason. I'm glad that this is encouraging and for you. So I see there's a question from Fazrat. Can purpose evolve as we gain more life experience, or does it usually remain the same throughout our lives? Excellent question. So at the core, purpose usually stays the same, but the way that you fulfill purpose, the way that you are able to make an impact usually evolves over time. Oftentimes, as you have more clarity, you can better serve others, you can make more of an impact, and you can better align with your purpose. Yes, there are things that evolve, but oftentimes at its core, it's the same, but the way that you fulfill purpose will evolve over time. There's so many ways that you can fulfill purpose. And thank you so very much, Jennifer, for those blessings. Yes, and blessings to you as well, and blessings to all who are watching. And you're very welcome, Dennis. Thank you so very much for viewing and for those comments. And yes, Fazrat, these are some wonderful questions. I want to acknowledge all of you for asking the wonderful questions, and thank you so very much for the compliment on the answers. So moving right along, thank you, Jason, for watching and for that excellent feedback. So I want to thank you all for watching today. I do believe I've answered all of the questions. I certainly appreciate all of you for tuning in on today. I encourage you to go back and watch the replay after I end the live. Share it with your colleagues, share it with your friends, share it with your family. I believe that this could be a blessing to someone else. Thank you so very much, all of you, for tuning in to this episode of The Purpose Today with Dr. April Dobson Podcast. It's been a joy to talk more about purpose-aligned career searches and being able to answer your questions that I didn't answer last week and the ones that you've answered today. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope that you'll tune in for another episode of The Purpose Today with Dr. April Dobson Podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Have an amazing evening and a purpose-filled weekend.
Dreaming of writing a book, launching a podcast, or creating a digital course? Ready to finally align your career, creativity, and impact? The Purpose Aligned Life Premium Coaching Cohort is here to help you turn purpose into reality. You'll receive tailored services, a personalized one-on-one assessment, 10 weekly group sessions, and exclusive strategy session, all for your desired transformation.